Mermaid. So I've been asked, is it more expensive to do ceremonial magic than, for example, witchcraft? And short answer, yeah, it unfortunately kind of is. Now, of course, here's the thing, with anything magic related, you can usually find ways to do it a lot cheaper or just with your mind, and that's generally free. But there are two main reasons why ceremonial magic is more expensive, and one is that fewer people are doing it, so books and materials very often are more expensive as it does have such a great market. So for the authors to earn anything, they have to charge more for each book. The other reason is that there's a lot of very specific materials that you need. In witchcraft, very often what you need is all sort of household articles, really. And the tools also are, generally speaking, household articles, so you can generally get away with it. I mean, sure, you want that amazing cauldron with engraved pentacles and all of that. That costs on $200 in the local witchcraft store. You can also do with old, worn-out tea kettle. It's a cauldron too. It'll do. So, but there's fewer such hacks in at least many types of ceremonial magic. But here's the clue. There are many types of ceremonial magic. If you are going to follow the system of Yandi and do summoning Enochian angels, then yeah, you're gonna have to follow that description to the letter, or it'll be pretty dangerous, or nothing happens. Take your pick. So yes, if then the recipe says gold, gold it is. But there's a lot of different types of ceremonial magic that you can do that really isn't that expensive. Excuse me, my phone. So yeah, I really should learn to edit these videos so I can get rid of distractions like that, but I'm a witch, not a technician. Anyway, so for example, if you get a book called Modern Magic, it has a very nice system for ceremonial magic. The book itself is pretty mass-produced. You can get it pretty cheap if you put aside, let me say, $20. You can definitely find it for that. And it even tells you how to do all of this using nothing but your mind. So it's a very nice path that is pretty cheap. However, yeah, for a lot of ritual magic, you want these different kinds of grimoires. You want that specific dagger that has so and so and so gemstones in it, with engraved with such and such and such, and unless you can do that job yourself, you're going to have to get a craft person to craft such a dagger after such and such and such specifications, and it will be expensive. I mean, I guess this comes a little bit back to the roots of it, that witchcraft, generally speaking, were practical magic that were practiced by everyday folks. So it had to be quick and cheap, because most of these people were farmers, so that they hardly had enough to eat, and then they didn't have enough to spend on expensive books and materials. So the materials are whatever you find around you. While ritual magic was more of a scholarly topic for those that had free time and money to spend. You have a bit of that still, but like I said, it really depends on the path you choose. So why is it so? Well, here's the thing. For example, you have a lot of these grimoires. For example, I was looking at one that had spells and rituals practiced in ancient Rome and Greece. I really wanted that book. However, expensive. But I mean, it had then the text in English, and it also had the text in Latin and the text in Greek and all of those things. And it's really for those that are especially interested. The publisher is not going to sell thousands and thousands and thousands of that book, because the segment of the population that has an interest in it is pretty small. Therefore, it gets expensive, while something like Learn to Contact Your Guardian Angels, you can pretty much mass produce. So therefore, materials have a tendency to be more expensive, but you can usually get around this by basically, there's a lot of information you can find online, then you get it pretty much free. There's also a lot of good books on ritual magic that are not very pricey. For example, the works of Aleister Crowley is so well known that it is generally available pretty cheaply. And the works of Donald Craig, like I mentioned with Modern Magic, pretty cheaply. Then you have a lot of those. If you just type in Ceremonial Magic, you can generally find quite a few good pieces. H.R. Lagarde is another person that you should look up. You could look up things like this Kybalion, which is a very known work that you can usually get pretty cheaply. Elipas Levi with Transcendental Magic. There's a lot of classics that you can definitely get started with that are not very expensive. Now when it comes to materials, a lot of paths uses a lot of pretty expensive gemstones. And also metals that, for example, need such and such metal corresponds with such and such astrological house, and so on and so forth. And while usually you can find hacks around them. For example, if something calls for gold, often you can go with something that's gold, that is gold plated, or often even cheaper, you can familiarize yourself with tables of correspondences and find something that has the same astrological meaning as gold and use that as a substitute. So with your best friend, if you want to do budget, Ceremonial Magic is a good book of correspondences. A book that has a lot of information about what sort of things corresponds to all other sorts of things magically, because then you can, generally speaking, find things to substitute the more expensive items. Now, of course, like I said, there are paths where you can't really substitute anything. So, for example, Yondi's summoning system, which I have already discussed here, it is difficult, it's dangerous, and it's expensive, and it's also extremely time-consuming, because some of these workings you will be used doing. You may have to use 3 weeks, several months for one single working. So, and you have to dedicate yourself completely to that. So it's a difficult thing to practice. But there's also a lot of ceremonial magic systems that are pretty easy to work with. The point is this: it doesn't have to be that expensive. You can definitely do the great work, develop yourself, reach for spirit, without you having to empty the bank. Like my teacher always said, use what you got. Basically, find a path that will allow for substitutes. Use materials that you can either find online or that are relatively cheap, because there are a lot of good ones in there, and then do what you can with what you got. I mean, if you suddenly becomes rich, then by all means get gold daggers all you want, but as it is, just work with what you have. So yeah, will you have to expect to have to shell out a bit more when it comes to ceremonial magic than, for example, Wicca or something like that, yeah, I would say you have to do that. It most likely, unless you base yourself on a purely mental system, which are also completely okay. Generally speaking, we'll have to know it's not that witchcraft can get expensive too. A lot of herbs are expensive, but it's generally more accepting of substitutes. For example, I wanted to do a ritual that required rose petals. I didn't have rose petals right then. I had some rose perfume. I was thinking, yeah, why not? We will use that. Because it's more based around basically just taking whatever you have on the shelf and using that. A lot of ceremonial magic are more specific, but there are almost nothing that has only one correspondence tied to it. So if you can find something that has the same correspondence, but that's a lot cheaper, then generally speaking, you will do pretty well. It's also have to do with amount. You don't, if something, for example, say you need to have a gold plate. What I would generally then do is paint a plate gold and then put some gold jewelry on it. Because then there's gold and there's gold on the plate. It'll work. If you financially it out. So yeah. But ceremonial magic are usually more studious. You do require usually to be more exact. But like I said, there's lots of different paths, so you should be pretty fine. And also, it's not always that those extremely expensive materials are better than the cheaper and easier to get materials. Often you can get books that, like for example, I would say that modern magic is a must-have for all modern occultists, and it's pretty cheap. Same with Alistair Crowley's works or the Kabbalion. There's a lot of books that are not those $100, $200, $300, $400 per book things. So yeah, ceremonial magic can get extremely expensive, but it doesn't have to. So yeah, so my advice is get a good guide for correspondences so that you can find substitutes for very expensive materials. Go with cheaper books. You don't need that grimoire that's just been translated into that has only 5 copies made and cost you a hand and a leg. You can do with the Kabbalion or Modern Magic. And be creative in finding ways to cheat. For example, gold painted plate with a few pieces of gold jewelry on it. It'll usually do fine if you cannot find an actual gold plate. So yes, yeah. Be creative and you will be fine. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great day and blessed be.